tell me. It's seeing is believing, or hearing is believing. I think, like many other people in this country, I didn't know much about domestic abuse.
Whispers of tension are spreading through the palace, and all eyes have turned to Queen Camilla. A final announcement over her royal title has just been released, igniting fresh controversy at the very heart of the monarchy. This is no minor detail. It's a decision that redefines her role and reshapes how history will remember her. "This doesn't look good," a royal aide commented. With tensions mounting and the crown's image on the line, one question lingers. How far will Camilla go to fight back against the palace's decision? It's only a matter of time till we find out. The question of Camilla's title. The story of Camilla's title had roots that went back many years. When she first entered the public eye as Charles's partner, people were divided. Some saw her as a woman who stood by him through difficult times. Others held on to their memory of Diana and did not wish to see Camilla in such a place of honor. In the streets of London, voices often carried mixed feelings. "I never thought she would step into such a role," one man once said. His words echoed the thoughts of many who struggled to accept her. When Charles and Camilla married in 2005, the palace announced that she would take the title of Duchess of Cornwall. This was meant to ease the public, who still kept Diana's image close. But even then, questions floated in newspapers and on television. Would Camilla one day be called Queen? People will never allow it, a woman concluded. These whispers grew louder as Charles moved closer to the throne. The debate did not end. It only grew stronger as the years passed. Every photograph of Camilla at royal events carried weight. People tried to read meaning in her expressions, in the way she stood, in how she walked beside Charles. "Her presence always sparks talk," one reporter said. Talk did not stop. It rolled on through magazines, debates, and late-night conversations. Camilla became a figure that carried both respect and rejection. People found themselves unsure how to place her in the grand history of the crown. The late Queen Elizabeth herself influenced part of the debate. For years, her silence on the matter left the door open to speculation. Was Camilla ever meant to be queen? At family gatherings and in official ceremonies, the question seemed to hover unseen. No one wanted to bring it up around the Queen, a royal aide once remarked. That hesitation kept the atmosphere thick with mystery. Everyone waited, but clarity did not come until much later. In tabloids and headlines, the debate often grew intense. Some writers defended Camilla, painting her as a loyal partner who gave Charles strength. Others chose words that are harsh. "She will never be Diana," an elderly citizen muttered. That thought shaped much of the argument. It became a shadow that followed Camilla everywhere. No matter how many years passed, Diana's memory stood as a wall that Camilla could not fully cross. At charity events, Camilla tried to soften the edges. She smiled, spoke warmly, and built causes of her own. Many who met her face to face walked away surprised. "She was kinder than I thought," one woman said after shaking her hand. Yet, kindness did not erase the question. The title still hung above her like a heavy crown that had not yet been placed. The public eye did not rest, and speculation kept growing. As Charles grew older, his future role became more present in daily talk. The crown, once thought distant, was now closer in sight, and with it came renewed focus on Camilla and if she would stand beside him as queen. "It will never sit well with people," a man outside Buckingham Palace once stated. They spoke of kings and their wives, of queens who shaped history, and of the role of consorts through the ages. "The title of queen carries centuries of meaning," one historian said. That meaning weighed heavily now, tied to Camilla's name. The past was not easy to ignore, and every title carried the characters of those who bore it before. Inside the palace, discussions must have been tense, though few details escaped the walls. Royal watchers believed conversations went back and forth for years. There was never one clear answer, a journalist once noted. Each option seemed to risk something. To call her queen might anger many, and to hold her as consort might look like rejection. There seemed to be no path without division. As the years unfolded, the Queen's Platinum Jubilee brought a rare moment of clarity. For the first time, Elizabeth herself gave a wish. She asked that Camilla be called Queen Consort when Charles became king. This statement was firm, yet even then, debates continued. The streets of Britain buzzed with opinion when Charles became king. Television anchors repeated the words "Queen Consort" with care, almost testing the sound. Social media lit up with sharp comments both for and against. "It feels wrong to hear her called Queen," one young man posted. That feeling spread through digital spaces where voices clashed daily. For many, the change was not simple. It reopened old feelings that had never fully healed. After Charles's accession, the press kept an eye on Camilla, searching for signs of how she carried the new role. Photos filled front pages, each one studied closely. "She looked like she wanted to prove herself," a man commented. Each step forward brought more judgment, more eyes watching, more voices ready to speak. Though the title was official, acceptance did not come easily. The question of her title was tied to history, memory, and emotion, all tangled in one name. The palace decides. The day the palace made its long-awaited announcement began like any other, but soon the news broke across every channel. A statement had been written, approved, and released to the public. "This is final, and there is no turning back," one palace insider explained. The message was firm, leaving little room for doubt. The announcement declared Camilla would be styled simply as Queen. The word consort was gone, stripped away in the final draft. For many, this shift was striking. It carried a kind of formality that demanded recognition. "It feels official in a way that consort never did," a host commented on live television. That broadcast reached millions who immediately began to discuss, argue, and react. The wording was clear, and clarity was something that had been missing for too long. The decision was not rushed. Behind palace walls, drafts were prepared, reviewed, and altered until every line felt accurate. The team of advisors weighed the risks carefully. "Every word was chosen like it was a jewel," a staff member said quietly. The care taken showed how sensitive the subject remained. No part of the text could risk backlash or confusion. The final draft had to settle the matter once and for all. When the words reached the newspapers, the headlines came quickly. Some printed them in bold, filling entire front pages with the phrase "Queen Camilla." Others kept their tone cooler, using smaller print and cautious language. News presenters spent hours picking apart the statement. They repeated phrases, dissected each word, and asked experts for their views. "This was the palace making its strongest move yet," one commentator explained on air. Strong or not, the words reached every home in the country. They became part of conversations at kitchen tables, offices, and coffee shops. The finality of the message spread through everyday life. Some saw the announcement as a sign of stability. To them, it gave the monarchy a clear path forward under Charles and Camilla. "It makes the crown look united," a supporter said outside Buckingham Palace. For others, it was a heavy blow, reopening feelings that had never healed. They viewed the word queen as too heavy, too linked with the past. "It erases Diana's memory in some way," one woman said bitterly. Emotions stood at opposite ends, and the divide was plain to see. The palace tried to soften the delivery by pairing the announcement with images of Camilla at public events. Photographs showed her smiling, holding hands with children, and speaking warmly to guests. "They want her image to match the title," one photographer suggested. These images were meant to frame the decision in humility, to remind people of her service, rather than create a rift. Yet photographs alone could not erase decades of uncertainty. Foreign press also caught hold of the story quickly. Across Europe and beyond, newspapers translated the statement into their own languages. "It is a shift that shows the palace is confident," one foreign correspondent wrote. Abroad, the debate was less tied to memory of Diana. Queen Camilla was not just a British figure now, but one who stood with global recognition. For royal aides, the hours after the release were tense. They monitored reactions, scanned news feeds, and watched how the story spread online. "We knew the storm would come," a young aide admitted, and the storm did come. Supporters argued it was only natural. A king's wife had always been styled as queen. "It is tradition, and tradition must hold," one elderly man explained. Critics fired back with equal passion. Social media platforms flooded with hashtags, memes, and arguments. The palace had made its choice, but the public had their way of shaping the story. So, while public debate raged, palace staff held firm to their decision. The statement was meant to close the matter, not extend it. "We will not change the wording again," one official stressed to reporters. That stress made clear the palace wanted the issue finished. The final statement was its strength, but also its burden, as it left no room for compromise. Even in Parliament, a few voices touched on the matter. "It is done, and we must move on," one member of Parliament declared. Public memory clung to the past, and no words from officials could change that. As the days passed, the story intensified. Television shows carried on their debates. Radio hosts invited callers to vent or defend. "I just can't bring myself to call her queen," one caller admitted live on air. The palace announcement had achieved what it set out to do: remove doubt, establish a single title, and set the monarchy's path. But in homes, streets, and screens, the debate lived on. For some, the word stuck in their throat no matter how many times they heard it. "People will argue about this for years," one journalist predicted during a broadcast. His words summed up what had just begun, not the end of a story, but the start of a new chapter filled with strong forces on every side. Why it all matters. The importance of Camilla's title stretched far beyond a single name. It touched the roots of monarchy, tradition, and history itself. Titles in the royal family were not casual labels. They carried years of meaning and shaped how people viewed the throne. "A title is never just a word in this family," one historian remarked. Those words revealed how deeply the crown relied on symbolism. Every title told a story, and every story shaped the nation's memory. In Britain, the monarchy was built on ritual. Crowns, robes, and ceremonies all worked together to give power its form. The title of queen, attached to Camilla, tied her to those rituals. Once she is called queen, it placed Camilla in a line of women who had shaped kingdoms and endured centuries of scrutiny. The crown had always used names and titles to project stability. When the palace named Camilla as queen, it signaled continuity, not change. "It shows the crown wants no break in tradition," one royal watcher observed. Continuity mattered because the monarchy survived on the idea that it stretched back unbroken through time. If the title had been softened or altered, it might have made the monarchy look uncertain in the eyes of its people. The title also mattered for King Charles himself. His reign needed firm ground, and his partner's status played a large role in shaping that ground. "The way the queen is styled affects the way the king is seen," one political commentator said on a broadcast. The two roles were bound together in the public eye. If Camilla's title appeared weak, critics might use it as a way to question Charles's authority, especially as the monarchy tried to hold its image in places where support had begun to fade. The announcement also mattered for the people inside the palace who worked daily to protect the crown's image. Their efforts relied on consistency and certainty. "We cannot tell the public one thing today and another tomorrow," one palace aide stressed. The final announcement closed the door to constant guessing. For the staff, this stability allowed them to present Camilla with confidence at every public event. Among citizens, the symbolism touched emotions deeply. For many, the word queen carried childhood memories of Queen Elizabeth II, parades, stamps, and coins. Now that same word was placed before Camilla. "It feels like a sacred oath has been broken," one elderly woman in York said. Her words showed how the public linked titles with personal memory. That link made the title more than formality. It became part of people's lives. For those who opposed the change, the title mattered as a test of voice. They felt it showed whether the crown listened to its people or not. "This proves the palace never cared what we thought," one critic claimed in an interview. The monarchy also understood that titles guided history books. Centuries later, readers would not see the debates, but they would see the names printed in bold. "Future generations will only read Queen Camilla," one archivist noted. The role of queen had also long been linked with duty. Queen consorts of the past took on causes, charities, and symbolic roles that shaped society. By giving Camilla the same title, the palace placed that duty squarely upon her. "She must carry it like others before her," one church leader commented. The expectation was clear. The word queen came with labor, not just honor. Some experts argued the decision was about protecting the monarchy from appearing weak. If Camilla's title had been different, critics might have seen it as not being strong enough. It would have looked like the palace was bending under pressure, one analyst explained. Instead, the final announcement projected strength. Even if the public was divided, the monarchy could not afford to appear uncertain. The importance of the title was also tied to global media. In every article, every headline, the name Queen Camilla would appear vividly. It will be written daily and people will grow used to it, one journalist predicted. Over time, words repeated in headlines began to settle as accepted truth. That slow acceptance was part of the palace's plan. In royal events, Camilla would be introduced as queen. Without the title, ceremonies risked looking unbalanced, as if one piece of the crown did not fit. Supporters saw strength in that choice. Critics saw coldness. They put rules above people's feelings. One member of the press said, "Either way, the message was clear. Tradition came first. The message told the nation that the monarchy stood united. The palace would rather risk anger than risk breaking the line of history." Through every angle, the title mattered not just for Camilla, but for the monarchy as a whole. It shaped how Britain viewed its crown, how the world respected it, and how history would remember it. This was more than a title. It was a statement about survival. One historian concluded in a debate that survival depended on symbols, and no symbol at the time carried more weight than the word queen. The balance between honor and labor. When the final announcement came, attention quickly turned to Camilla herself. People wanted to know how she felt in private, far from the flashing lights. Reports soon spread across newspapers and television that she was not pleased by the tone of the decision. She felt the statement left her exposed. One aide admitted, exposed or not, she now had to step into the title and carry it. Yet the idea that she had little control over the final text seemed to trouble her. The crown might give titles, but those titles also gave burdens. At private dinners with trusted friends, Camilla reportedly let her feelings show more clearly. She believed the word queen would trigger hostility, one guest recalled after such a gathering. That fear revealed her awareness of the divide outside palace gates. She knew that every headline carried echoes of the past, and she could not erase them by charm or appearance. Her frustration grew as she realized she could not shape the story alone. Journalists who tracked her movements described subtle signs of strain. Photographs showed her lips pressed tight, her eyes narrowed at moments when cameras lingered. She looked like someone holding back her thoughts, one photographer said. For the public, such images fueled gossip. Each look was treated as evidence of worry, even if no words came from her mouth. Silence only deepened the speculation. Some close to her suggested she felt cornered by the way the decision was handled. The palace had moved without leaving her much choice.
It's a moment when I thought, I'd have to bite my bottom lip very hard. I couldn't believe it. They were
She was said to have flared up and asked questions about the arrangement. She wanted more say in how the announcement was phrased, one insider insisted. If true, that lack of control cuts deeply. Camilla had always tried to manage her image carefully, and here it slipped out of her hands in a single statement. Observers also noted how her body language shifted during public appearances following the announcement. She walked with Charles but seemed distant at times, avoiding eye contact with the crowd. Some sympathized with her, others judged her more harshly. Even those who supported her recognized her discomfort. Friends who spoke off record said she confided her worries often. She feared the title would never be accepted fully, one friend disclosed. That fear made her question whether the palace had acted too quickly. For Camilla, the crown's decision was not just about duty, it was about survival in a world where judgment never slept. Inside the palace, she reportedly turned her frustration into sharp words. Staff sometimes felt the sting of her temper. While in public she stayed composed, the private story suggested a woman wrestling with resentment. Her words set the stage for a story filled with hints of anger and entitlement. Television commentators seized on these reports and built their own different narratives. Some argued she was unfairly treated, while others claimed she was simply ungrateful. She should have been grateful for the honor, one panelist argued in a heated debate. The clash of voices only added more pressure. Camilla's reported frustration became fuel for shows, articles, and gossip columns across the nation. For Camilla herself, the title seemed to carry more weight than she had expected. The ghost in question was clear, though not named. Camilla's reaction showed she understood the shadow would never completely disappear. It followed her into every new role. Critics suggested her anger did not only come from fear of rejection, but also from pride. She had endured years of being called unworthy, and now she felt she had earned her place. She believed she had proved herself already, one confidant explained. To her, the palace's bold announcement risked undoing the careful progress she had made. It looked like a step forward that carried old storms with it. Those close to Charles also noticed how her frustrations spilled into their private life. While the king stayed composed, Camilla's mood sometimes clashed with his calmness. She told him the title would bring more enemies, one associate confided. That warning showed her protective side, but it also revealed the fear that her anger might spread to his reign. Her voice carried not just worry for herself, but for the crown as a whole. The debate about her feelings reached beyond Britain, with foreign reporters writing about her supposed unhappiness. Some painted her as a woman, trapped by tradition. She is caught between duty and desire, one journalist in Paris wrote. That image captured the sense of a consort who wanted respect, yet feared the cost of earning it. Abroad, her reaction became part of a larger story about monarchy in the modern world. Royal aides worked hard to present her in a more appealing light, but she could not escape the idea that the announcement had forced her into a place she had not chosen. Duty did not always soothe feelings, and the monarchy had always carried both history and emotion in equal measure. Her reported reaction revealed the complexity of the role itself. To the public, she was a symbol. To herself, she was a woman dealing with judgment, history, and expectation. She just wanted a chance to breathe, one longtime acquaintance reflected. That simple wish explained much of the frustration tied to her new title. The palace had made its choice, and she had to live with it, no matter how heavy it felt. The voice of the people. The announcement sent waves across the country, and reactions appeared almost instantly. Crowds outside London landmarks were asked their thoughts, and television channels filled the air with endless debate. It feels like the monarchy has forced this on us, one man in Trafalgar Square complained. That sense of being pushed rather than consulted colored much of the early response. Newspapers carried headlines full of drama, setting the stage for weeks of division. In pubs and coffee shops, ordinary people gave their opinions with passion. The name on everyone's lips was Camilla, but the argument was really about tradition and memory. "I just don't think she deserves it," one woman sipping tea in Birmingham declared. Such voices spoke for many who still held firm views about what the word queen should mean. Conversations grew heated as people traded views across tables and counters. Social media became another battlefield where supporters and critics clashed without pause. Hashtags rose to the top of trending lists as users posted images, jokes, and criticisms. "She will never be my queen," one online user wrote late at night. The power of those simple posts was enormous, spreading across platforms and shaping global discussion. Television commentators tried to capture the mood, but often only added more fire. Some defended the decision, others attacked it with sharp words. "This is rewriting history for the sake of comfort," one analyst on a morning show argued. These televised remarks drew millions of viewers, each forming their own conclusions. As the days passed, the announcement felt less like an isolated decision and more like a cultural storm. The tabloid press especially thrived on the drama, filling pages with speculation and strong opinions. Headlines screamed of fury, betrayal, or triumph, depending on which side the paper favored. "It will divide the kingdom for years," one editor was quoted as saying. These headlines sold quickly, showing how eager the public was to read about the controversy. Camilla's name appeared everywhere, tied now to debates that stretched far beyond her own actions. For some, the announcement sparked feelings of betrayal as though promises had been broken along the way. They remembered past words and compared them with the present choice. "We were told it wouldn't happen," one pensioner in Manchester reminded a local reporter. That memory of earlier assurances fueled a sense of mistrust. People did not just react to the title, they reacted to the story of shifting royal messages. "She has done her duty without complaint," one supporter outside Windsor Castle stated. Such voices reminded the public that Camilla had taken on many tasks and stayed beside the king through difficult times. The support, though much lesser, still carried weight. Across radio stations, callers flooded lines to share strong feelings. The massive volume of opinions was overwhelming. "This is the biggest royal debate in decades," one radio host admitted live on air. The story was no longer just in the hands of the palace, but in the mouths of the people. The younger generations also joined the discussion, For many of them, the issue was less about history and more about fairness, revealing how younger citizens often viewed the monarchy through a different lens. International media picked up the story with equal energy, framing it as a question of tradition versus change. Reports came from Europe, America, and beyond, each with its own interpretation. Britain is split again, this time over a crown, one American anchor announced. Foreign coverage made clear that the reaction was not limited to the United Kingdom. The world was watching, and the story traveled far beyond its origins. Critics used the announcement to reopen old wounds, revisiting scandals that many wished were forgotten. Television programs replayed archival footage, drawing lines between past events and present decisions. She carries with her a history that cannot be erased, one historian warned. For viewers, this constant return to the past was both captivating. It proved that the reaction was not just about today, but about decades of memory. Supporters, however, tried to shift the focus toward stability. They stressed that the monarchy needed unity at a time of global uncertainty. "It brings strength to have a clear queen beside the king," one veteran insisted. His words reflected a group of people who believed tradition mattered more than controversy. The announcement, in their eyes, was a step toward solid ground rather than division. It was no longer just a palace matter, but a question of identity across generations. As weeks passed, the story refused to fade from headlines or conversations. Polls were published showing splits in public opinion, some leaning toward support, others toward rejection. The numbers prove just how divided the country is, one pollster explained. Those figures gave shape to what people already felt, a nation struggling to agree on its future. For Camilla, the reaction was both her burden and her backdrop. The media, always hungry for attention, made sure the story continued to grow rather than shrink. Each photograph, each public outing, was analyzed and dissected in print and on screen. "Every move she makes will be judged now," one commentator predicted. Charles's position on the decision. From the beginning, Charles's stance on the matter shaped how events unfolded. He had waited for decades to step into the role of king, and his decisions carried more weight than ever before. He always wanted her by his side, fully recognized, one palace insider shared. That desire became a driving force, not just for the announcement, but for how he handled the storm that followed. His loyalty stood firm, even when others hesitated. Observers noticed that Charles rarely wavered in public. He carried himself with calm assurance, even as debates raged outside the palace walls. He looked determined to defend her, one bystander said after watching him at a royal event. His steady presence sent a message that his support for Camilla would not fail. For him, the crown was not just a symbol, it was also a shield he intended to share with her. Behind closed doors, his words reportedly carried the same conviction. Advisors described him as unbending when it came to the subject of titles. He said the decision was final, one advisor recalled after a tense meeting. That firmness left little room for debate within palace circles. Those who hoped he might retreat from the announcement soon realized they were mistaken. Friends close to Charles explained that his support came from years of shared trials. He had faced criticism, heartbreak, and constant comparisons, yet Camilla remained with him. She was always his strength in private, one longtime companion revealed. That private loyalty became a public principle once he wore the crown. The king would not allow her to stand in the shadows any longer. Public appearances made his intentions clearer still. He often made small gestures, guiding her forward or holding her hand in front of waiting cameras. But they told a story of a king unwilling to let his consort appear lesser in any way. Charles also gave subtle signals through speeches. Without naming her directly, he spoke of duty, loyalty, and shared purpose. He framed her as part of his reign, one political commentator noted. These carefully chosen words linked her role directly to his vision for the monarchy. It became clear that for Charles, there could be no separation between his crown and her presence. Some inside the palace admitted that his stance made their jobs harder. They had to manage not only public anger but also his insistence on full recognition for Camilla. He pushed back against anyone who doubted her, one staff member disclosed. His determination meant that advisors had to adapt quickly. The king's word was final, and his support left no room for compromise. Family members, too, understood the depth of his conviction. While not all shared his enthusiasm, they recognized his unyielding position. He made it clear this was not negotiable. One relative reportedly remarked. That clarity avoided prolonged disputes within the royal household, even if quiet tension lingered. Charles had drawn his line, and he would not move it. In moments of public celebration, his loyalty became part of the spectacle. Crowds saw him guide her into carriages, walk beside her during ceremonies, and acknowledge her role openly. It looked like he wanted the world to see them as equals. One spectator in Edinburgh said, "For many, those moments were as telling as the official announcement itself." The king was shaping perception through every shared step. Commentators suggested that his insistence stemmed from more than affection. It also reflected his vision for the future of the monarchy. He wanted to modernize the idea of partnership, one royal historian explained. To him, Camilla was not just a companion, but a co-figure in a reign that needed strength on both sides. His position carried both personal and political meaning. Those who doubted Camilla quickly realized that doubting Charles was useless. His support gave her legitimacy that no paper statement alone could deliver. He gave her authority by standing firm. One commentator on national radio observed, "The king's visible confidence reshaped conversations, forcing even critics to acknowledge her elevated place. His loyalty served as a shield against even the fiercest attacks. His support also revealed something about his character. For years he had been described as hesitant, even indecisive, but his recent stance suggested a king who knew what he wanted and was prepared to endure backlash to achieve it. The press found themselves remarking on his resolve. "He is not a man who will step back from this," one columnist wrote. Such remarks highlighted the power of his position. Whatever the arguments, the king had made his choice, and his choice would stand. Ultimately, his stance demonstrated that the monarchy, under his reign, would reflect his personal loyalty as much as its inherited traditions. He was no longer a waiting heir, but a ruling king with the power to shape perception. He made it clear she was his partner in every sense, one courtier concluded. The larger debate over monarchy and tradition. The announcement sparked not only personal reactions, but also deeper questions about the institution itself. People across Britain and abroad began to wonder what it meant for the monarchy in a modern age. "It shows the monarchy is ready to bend tradition when it suits," one political writer argued. That observation captured the sense that the crown had shifted its rules for the sake of the king's personal life. Whether seen as progress or compromise, the move carried weight for the reign ahead. Charles now had to govern not just with policy and ceremony, but also with perception. His reign would always be linked to this decision, no matter what else he achieved. "It will define how history remembers him," one historian explained during a panel discussion. The idea of legacy hung in the balance as analysts asked if his loyalty to Camilla might either strengthen or weaken the crown in the long run. The choice became a marker of identity for his rule. For many observers, the change symbolized a monarchy torn between heritage and adaptation. Some saw it as necessary evolution, while others called it betrayal. "It feels like the crown has broken its own rules," one man outside Westminster complained. To critics, the issue was larger than titles. It was about trust in an institution built on continuity. The debate revealed how fragile that trust could be. Supporters, however, framed the decision as proof that the monarchy could adjust without losing its core. They argued that Charles had modernized the crown simply by standing by the woman he loved. "It makes the monarchy look more human," one supporter commented. By showing devotion and loyalty, the king appeared relatable in ways that stiff tradition sometimes failed to achieve. The monarchy gained warmth, even as it risked controversy. Camilla's role within this larger debate also changed sharply. She was no longer just a supporting figure, but a central subject of national conversation. "She has become a symbol of transformation," one royal commentator observed. In this view, her presence marked the monarchy's willingness to redefine itself in the 21st century. But that symbolic role came with pressure, and she now had to carry it daily. Analysts pointed out that the decision might alter how future generations viewed succession. If titles could shift now, perhaps they could shift again later. It opens the door for other changes in the future, one academic explained. This sense of fluidity bothered traditionalists, who worried that bending one rule might weaken the foundation of them all. The monarchy, for them, was no longer fixed. On the other hand, young people often embrace the shift as long overdue. They wanted an institution that looked forward rather than backward. It feels more like the world we live in today, one university student said. This approval showed a generational divide in how the crown was judged. For younger voices, Camilla's new role was less about history and more about authenticity. Internationally, the announcement raised questions about Britain's global image. Monarchies in other nations faced their own pressures, and Charles's move became a case study. It shows the crown is flexible, but also vulnerable. One correspondent in Canada noted, this dual image affected how the monarchy was seen abroad, respected, yet increasingly human in its flaws and adjustments. The decision shaped not only local debate, but also diplomatic perception. Within Britain, the crown's image now depended heavily on how Camilla conducted herself moving forward. She could not simply carry the title without proving its value through action. She will need to win people over through service, one charity organizer suggested. That meant more public appearances, more visible work, and more effort to soften the doubts still attached to her name. The title alone would not erase suspicion. For Charles, the impact of the decision rested on whether it fostered stability or stirred lasting division. If the crown held together, he would be praised for boldness. If it fractured further, critics would point to this moment as the cause. It will either be seen as strength or weakness, one former diplomat stated. The stakes for his reign were high, and much depended on how the story unfolded in years to come. Religious voices also entered the debate, with some questioning the spiritual significance of the title. The crown had long been tied to church tradition, and any change touched sacred ground. It weakens the sacred aura of monarchy, one clergyman warned during a sermon. Such warnings reminded the nation that the monarchy was not only political, but also spiritual in its symbolism. The decision reached into centuries of faith and ceremony. At the same time, feminist voices viewed the shift differently, seeing it as a rare moment of empowerment for a woman in the royal system. It proves women are not just ornaments in the monarchy, one activist declared. Camilla's elevation was seen as evidence that roles once restricted could expand, even if imperfectly. For some, that offered hope for future queens and consorts alike. The monarchy's image also faced new challenges in the media age. Every move, word, and gesture would be captured, repeated, and judged through countless lenses. The crown cannot hide anymore, one journalist explained during a broadcast. This constant visibility meant that the decision about Camilla would never fade quietly into history. It would be replayed again and again as part of the modern royal narrative. In the end, the debate over monarchy and tradition revealed how much importance a single choice could carry. The title given to Camilla was not just about her, it reshaped the crown itself. It shows how fragile monarchy can be when it touches memory, one academic concluded at a lecture. Each voice, whether in support or opposition, contributed to the portrait of a monarchy caught between past and future. The debate was no longer simply about people, it was about the soul of the institution. How do you think this new decision concerning Camilla's title affects the monarchy? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.